Hey everyone! In the last video, we installed Snowcap and created our first warehouse. Today, we're going one level up, managing Snowflake permissions, RBAC as code. By the end of this video, you'll have a working analyst role wired through a clean role hierarchy and assigned to a user, all from a single YAML file. But before we get into the how, let's talk about the why.
If your Snowflake account has been around for any length of time, your RBAC probably looks like this. Somebody granted access just for one query 2 years ago. Somebody else gave a service account a role they barely understood. Now, you've got a tangle of permissions, and nobody can answer the simple question: who has access to what and why? Managing RBAC by clicking through the Snowflake UI breaks down in 3 places. First, drift. Once a grant exists, it's part of your account state. There's no source of truth that says what should be there versus what is there. So things pile up, and nobody cleans them up because nobody knows what's safe to remove. Second, no audit trail. A grant gets created, but you can't easily see who created it, when or why. That's a real problem when compliance asks you to prove who has access to PII. Third, every change is slow and risky. Onboarding a new analyst means hunting through the UI to figure out which roles their teammate has. Offboarding means hoping you remember to revoke everything. Spinning up a dev or staging environment means doing it all from scratch. Snowcap fixes this by moving the source of truth into your repo. Roles, grants, user assignment, all declared in YAML, versioned in Git, reviewed in pull requests. Every change has a commit, so you have an audit trail by default. Onboarding is a one-line addition, offboarding is a one-line deletion. And because Snowcap queries the live account on every run, drift becomes visible the moment it happens. That's the why. Now let me show you the pattern. Before we touch any YAML, let me show you the pattern. The idea is to never grant privileges directly to users. Instead, you build a hierarchy. At the bottom, object roles. 1 role per Snowflake object, 1 role per database, 1 per warehouse, 1 per schema. Each one grants exactly the privileges needed on that single object. By convention, we prefix them with C underscore, so they sort to the bottom of the role list in the UI. Above that, base or composite roles. These bundle object roles together into logical groups. For example, everything an analyst needs to see. Then, functional roles. These are the human readable ones. Analyst, loader, engineer. These are what you actually assign to users. And at the top, users. Each user gets 1 or more functional roles. The win: when you add a new database, you create 1 object role for it and plug it into the composite roles that need it. You never touch the functional roles or the users. That's how this scales. Okay, let's build it. Quick note before we start. In the last video, I used sysadmin because we were creating a warehouse. For RBAC, you need a role with permission to create roles and manage grants. The standard role for that is security admin, so that's what I'm using here. The general rule: whatever Snowflake resource you're managing with Snowcap, your role needs the right privileges to create it. Roles and grants need security admin. Account level objects like databases and warehouse need sysadmin. The Snowcap docs have a full breakdown. Let's start at the bottom of the hierarchy. Object roles. I want 1 role that represents access to the analytics database and another that represents access to the WH transforming warehouse. I'll define them under roles. Notice the Z underscore prefix. That's the convention I mentioned earlier. Now the grants. For the database role, I use usage on the analytics database. That lets anyone with this role see the database exists and reference it. It does not give them access to any data. We'll layer that on later. For the warehouse role, I grant both usage and monitor on WH transforming. Usage lets them run queries on it. Monitor lets them see what's happening. That's 2 roles and 2 grants. Each one wraps a single Snowflake object. Boring on purpose. These are the building blocks. Now I need 2 more object roles. Before analysts can query anything, they need usage on the schemas that hold the table. That's how Snowflake's permission model works. You need usage at each level. Database then schema before you can query the tables inside. So I add a role called Z Schemas Usage Analytics, and I grant usage on all current schemas and, importantly, all future schemas in the analytics database. That way, when someone creates a new schema tomorrow, the analyst role automatically gets usage on it. Then, the actual data access. I add a role called Z Table Views Select Analytics. Same pattern. Select on all current tables and views, plus all future ones. That way, when someone creates a new table tomorrow, the analyst role automatically has access. No drift, no manual update. Now I assemble the composite role. Z-based analyst brings together the 4 object roles: database access, warehouse access, schema usage, and table select. Everything an analyst needs at the object level lives in this one role. Above that, I create the functional role analyst, and I grant Z-based analyst to it. This extra layer might feel like overkill at first, but it pays off when you have multiple functional roles: a senior analyst, a read-only analyst, that all share the same base. Finally, I assign the functional role to a user. Same role grants block, but this time using to user instead of to role. I'm granting the analyst role to my own user, F Mercado. And that's the full config, one file, the full chain, from a user down to a functional role, then a composite role, then 4 object roles, and the grants that wire each of them to actual Snowflake objects. Same loop as before, plan first. Snowcap connects to Snowflake using Security Admin. It queries the current state, compares it to my config, and shows me exactly what it would do. 6 roles to create: the grants, the role-to-role grants, and the role-to-user grant, all listed out before anything happens. Plan looks right. Let's apply. Snowcap reruns the comparison, generates the SQL, and executes it. All 6 roles created, all the grants in place, the role chain is assembled, and F Mercado now has the analyst role. Let's verify in the Snowflake UI. Here are the new roles. Notice the Z prefix sorts them together. If I click into analyst, I can see it has Z-based analyst granted to it. And Z-based analyst contains the 4 object roles: database, schema, table select, and warehouse. F Mercado now has the analyst role assigned, exactly what I declared in the YAML. That's the whole pattern in one file. It might look like a lot for one analyst role, but here's where it pays off. When you add a new database, you add 1 object role and 1 grant. The functional roles, the users, the hierarchy, none of that changes. When you onboard a new analyst, you add 1 line under to user. They inherit everything through the role chain. When someone leaves the team, you remove that 1 line and run apply. Their access is gone cleanly with a git commit as the audit trail. The full RBAC guide on snowcap.datacoves.com goes much deeper. For each templates that generate roles for entire list of databases, managed access schemas, the difference between account level and database roles, and a flag called sync resources that does a full cleanup. Anything not in your config gets deleted. Powerful, but use it carefully. Links to all of that are below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.